I wasn't planning on going to see Madam Web. It's an origin story about a character that few people even know or remember. Fewer still care much about her. From what little information we were able to learn from the trailers and interviews, the movie wasn't going to bear much of a resemblance to the source material anyway. I'm not quite sure who this movie was being made for. Definitely looked like a pass from me. Then a couple of things came up that made me think perhaps I was being too hasty. Then four things came up that made me feel like I was definitely being too hasty. So off to the cinema I went to see Madam Web on the big screen. And now I regret it. Sadly, the essential plot elements I was looking for never showed up, and somehow this was turned into this by this. So that explains a few things. Also, don't be taken in by the very deceptive trailer. You're led to believe you'll be watching epic battles with all of these variants of spider-powered female characters from the Marvel comics. You won't. Instead, you'll be treated to this. 3 girls in their 20s portraying girls in their teens, but behaving like girls in their 20s. There is no hero's journey to be witnessed here. No one suits up in this movie. Instead, you have to endure 116 minutes of one of the worst movies ever to make its way through the lens of a camera. Hello everyone, it's Tim from SpaceNetTV. This review will contain spoilers, but honestly, if you're smart, you're not going to see this movie anyway, so what do you care? Let's talk about Sony trying to create their own MCU. It may have the Marvel name, and is bad enough that you might think it was made by Disney, but this disaster is all on Sony. Madam Web is set in yet another one of Sony's Spider-Verse universes. I don't know about you, but I'm really about done with the multiverse concept and nonsense. Pick a universe and tell some stories that have some actual meaning and consequences to your overall franchise, not these little pocket pieces where anything can happen and it doesn't matter one little bit. Now, Sony has brought us some really good Spider-Man films like Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, and animated features such as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is a bit of a misnomer. Spider-Man wasn't in either of these two movies. Miles Morales was. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Miles Morales is, was, and forever shall be just Miles Morales. Anyway, apparently some Sony executives spent way too much time in Kevin Feige's hot tub and got infected with some sort of brain-eating amoeba. The resultant brain damage led Sony to think that what they were really missing all along in their very successful Spider-Verses, whatever. What they really needed was a gaggle of worthless girl bosses. Sony needed to create their very own MCU. Sony set out on an exhausting search for someone to craft a compelling story, a showrunner with the depth of experience to put together a truly cohesive film. Instead, they gave us this woman. She must have an impressive resume to be given the helm of such an important film that's designed to open up a whole new franchise for Sony. Let's see. TV. Oh, look, the canceled pilot for the Game of Thrones spinoff that was so bad they never aired it. Well, this looks like it may be her first feature film. Okay, well, everyone has to start somewhere, but the nucleus of the project is the writers. Sony needed a team to write a powerful script to introduce what was really a one-off character from the Spider-Man comics. These writers would need to weave a story so commanding and thrilling as to elevate this character far beyond what the Marvel comics ever did, to craft an intricate, exciting story that would capture the imagination of audiences to build a whole new major franchise for Sony. Unfortunately, apparently everybody else was busy, so they gave it to these lunkheads who brought us Morbius. Remember Morbius? No? Of course you don't. Why would you? No one does. It was shit. A lot of people are trying to draw parallels between Morbius and Madam Web and asking, is Madam Web better than Morbius? No, it isn't. Morbius edges it out mostly because it's a full 8 minutes shorter. Now, before I go any further, let me reiterate my earlier warning. Spoilers are ahead. If you're still just hell-bent on seeing this awful, pitiful excuse for a film, now would be a good time to bail out. I will, however, question your mental stability, but you do you. In the comics, Madam Web's powers come from her being a mutant. She suffers from myasthenia gravis, a neuromuscular disease that causes her blindness, her confinement to a wheelchair, and ultimately why she is hooked up to a web-like life support system. That's where the name comes from, Madam Web. Her latent mutant abilities are activated as her disease progresses, giving her her powers. In the movie, she's not a mutant. Her powers come from some magical spider people bullshit who perform midwife services deep inside the Amazon rainforest, a well-known tourist spot for women well into their third trimester. By the time my wife was in her 8th month, she was so uncomfortable that she could barely sit down and stand up without help. But traipsing around the rainforest looking for some highly venomous spider seems like the responsible thing to do. You go, girl, stunning and brave. However, in Sony's defense, in the comics, Madam Web did appear in different variations, not all of them older disabled women. But that version is the one that is best known to Marvel fans. Madam Web was not a major character by any stretch, more of a supporting character used to move plots along in a few storylines. The plot of this movie, well, let's let them start off with it.
Seen that man before.
So who is he?
Ezekiel Sims. He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Madam Web begins deep in the Amazon rainforest in the early 1970s as we follow a research team led by a very, very pregnant woman, as they so often are, because, even in this state, they're so much more capable than men. I was so engrossed in this movie, I can't even remember her name. Let's call her Doofus. Doofus locates the magical bullshit spider she's been searching for, only to be betrayed by her assistant Ezekiel for, I don't know, reasons. He kills the entire team and shoots Doofus and leaves her to die in the jungle, stealing the spider, as if there weren't probably tons more around to be found. Apparently no questions were asked when the research team doesn't make it back because, I don't know, more reasons. We're simply not told what happened. Constance, that's the Doofus's name. Fortunately, the Amazon jungle has a network of first responders and midwives in the form of magical spider people. Constance, who was left for dead, is conveniently scooped up and taken away to deliver her baby Doofus Jr., Cassandra, which was a real stroke of luck. I don't even think they checked for her insurance. Sadly, Constance dies during childbirth, either from her wounds suffered from Ezekiel, or perhaps because she's delivering a baby in the most unsanitary, disgusting environment imaginable. Either way, she's gone. Then we just fast forward to 2003. Why 2003? Who knows? Shut up and stop your constant nitpicking. We find Cassandra working as a paramedic in New York alongside Uncle Ben, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben. But you have to know that or figure that out on your own because Sony can't mention his name because of licensing issues. There was never any attempt to explain how infant Cassandra got from the spider people, so elusive that they have shunned contact with the outside world, to New York. Who raised her? Where did she live? Where did she go to school? Did the spider people raise her until she had a high enough SAT score to go to college? Don't know. We're not told. Who knows? Anyway, fine. Clearly, I don't appreciate the writer's genius here. Cassandra has an on-the-job, near-death experience where she first begins to experience her abilities. Meanwhile, at the same time, Ezekiel starts having premonitions about 3 spider women that are out to kill him. Ezekiel, no doubt emboldened by being able to off an entire research team without so much as a question asked, decides the logical thing to do is to hunt them down. Naturally, the way to do this is to scan the mental images from his brain into a computer so he can perform some sort of recognition search to find them. In 2003. Okay. On his first attempt to deal with the girls, Cassandra gets there just in the nick of time to interfere with his plans and escapes with them into the woods, where AOL can't find them. There is a lot of talking to explain the plot to us idiots, and then later Ezekiel finds them again. Cassandra stops him this time by running him over with her car. After multiple attempts on their lives, Cassandra decides that the smartest move is to leave them behind to fly off to the rainforest to find the magical spider midwives. Fortunately, the script supports her decision, so no further attempts are made to locate and kill the girls. That's some real consideration there, knowing when someone has gone off on holiday that you don't want to be bothered with work. Ezekiel is a real gentleman. Nearly immediately, she finds the spider people who have remained hidden for centuries from the outside world within the thousands of square miles of jungle in which to hide. Cassandra learns how the web of life works and becomes Madam Web. Back home, Ezekiel finally finds the girls conveniently right when Cassandra is returning from her trip. She saves the day once again by running over Ezekiel with her car. Maybe the FX studio is running a special on cars running over people that week. Some more things happen because they're in the script, and in the end, they lure Ezekiel into a fireworks factory because there are tons of those in Manhattan. There are a lot of meaningless explosions, and ultimately Ezekiel is killed by a giant Pepsi sign falling on him. I'm not sure whose product placement that was, Pepsi's for the view or Coke's to show the shoddy work Pepsi does on their signs. Whatever, he's dead. Oh, and somehow the fireworks blind and cripple Cassandra. Fast forward a bit to see Cassandra promise to train the other spider women. Train them in what? I have no idea. She can't fight. She doesn't have any powers that would enable her to fight. She couldn't even see her own injuries coming. But let's not think too hard of that and just call it the end. Now, some movies are so bad that they're good. Some are just so bad that it makes you want to start cutting yourself again. Madam Web may well be one of the worst films ever made. Certainly one of the worst superhero movies ever made. And I used to work for Disney. Maybe I'm being unfair, jaded. Tim, you're always so negative, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Let's look at what others have to say. At only 13%, the critics certainly didn't seem to care much for it either. Audience score is mixed at a 55%. That's not terrible. Let me check the all audiences score. Well, that took a little nosedive there to 43%, which actually makes much more sense to me. Let's check over on Metacritic, because their numbers are usually less skewed by review bombing wars. Things don't seem to be any better here with a general unfavorable score of 27 by the critics. Ouch. And a 2.3 user score. That's just devastatingly low. Like worse than the Marvel's low. Let's take a look at that. Yep. Even the Marvels managed a 3.8 user score. Wow, that does not bode well for the financials on this movie. Apparently, with the aid of the FX discount on car crashes, the budget of Madam Web was kept down to a neat $80 million before production, distribution, and advertising costs. Not a bad production budget considering the $200 million plus bloated Disney Marvel flops. This means Sony will only need to make about $200 million worldwide just to break even. As you can see, it's done less than $50 million during its, and here's some pure Hollywood bullshit logic for you, during its opening holiday weekend, stretching from Valentine's on the 14th all the way down to the 18th in an effort to declare the opening weekend a success. While it's still possible that it might reach the break-even point, I have to be honest and say I really don't see it happening. Apparently, it's not just me being jaded and a big downer. It really is a terrible, terrible movie. Movie making really is an art form, but there is some science to it. Often we can see what could have been great films get tripped up with a good story that fails to perform because of bad direction, poor acting performances, poor cinematography, lackluster special effects. The craft service table never has those little mini hot dogs I love so much. Madam Web doesn't fail in any of these categories. It fails in all of them, throwing a bad plot onto the pile just for laughs. Do you enjoy that nauseated feeling you get coming off of Star Tours or worse, the orange side of Mission Space? Then the cinematography of Madam Web was made for you. Ladies, if your man insists on taking you to see this film, make sure you bring a purse you don't care much about because you may be throwing up into it. So how does Madam Web fit into Sony's overall vision of the Spider-Man universe? It sort of doesn't. Honestly, it falls in that Sony's larger universe of Spider-Man adjacent projects like the Venom series. There isn't much here redeeming to find anywhere in Madam Web. I think it's safe to say this corner of the Sony Spider-Verse won't be coming back anytime soon. And that's probably a really good, smart move by Sony to just put this away, mark it on the side of the can as big mistake, and put it on the same shelf where Warner Brothers stuck Batgirl. Anyway, That's all I have for now. I'll be back real soon with another video. I will see you then. You take care now.